Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about the brilliant modernist composer Morton Feldman, whose dates were roughly 1926 to 1987. Now, Feldman's music changed radically throughout his career, and I'm going to talk about mostly his later works, because those are the ones that interest me the most. As a younger composer, he experimented with graphic notation and indeterminacy. As you know, he was friends with John Cage and sort of that crew, But then he began to get interested in precise rhythmic notation and musical pattern making, influenced to some extent by his relationship with the New York School of American Artists, and who wrote pattern things, and also his study of rug making in the Far East, of tapestries with geometric shapes that slowly morph into other geometric shapes. All of this found an outlet in his music. And one of the most interesting things about it for me is that it isn't a music that has feeling, shall we say, expression. It isn't anything like that. It's a musical object. Some of these objects are very, very large, meaning in music, very, very long in terms of duration. And we'll get to that in a moment. Most of it is very, very quiet. And the idea is simply that you lose yourself in these slowly, slowly changing patterns, just 3 or 4 note groups that repeat, but ever so gradually change in ways that may be sometimes imperceptible and sometimes are quite perceptible. It's fascinating stuff for me. And what makes it fascinating for me is that he finds a use for music which is completely different, but which has its own integrity. His music is pure and honest, and it is what it is. You may not like music which is, in a sense, an abstract constructed pattern, an object, like a mobile turning in space. I mean, that's what his music reminds me of. And, I don't feel like listening to it all the time, but there's no question that what he did was absolutely masterful. When in performance, it's extremely difficult to perform because obviously the rhythmic notation is minute and intricate, and the durations are sometimes crazy. A second string quartet lasts something like 5 or 6 hours in one movement. So it requires intense concentration, and you're not trying to express anything. You're simply trying to create a shape with the utmost precision. And of course, because human beings are involved, and often in his music, voices, which makes it even more fascinating, there's always a tension between the natural tendency to be expressive and the natural tendency of instruments as imitations of the human voice to be expressive, and the music itself, which is completely inexpressive. And I just think it's marvelous. He really does achieve, in my view, a new concept of what music can be. And more than a lot of the other experimental composers of his era, I mean, John Cage and people like that who tended to do all of these experimental things, saying, music can be anything, or music. For Feldman, he wanted his music to be something. And it is that something. It is that static shape type thing, which is easier to listen to than it is to describe if you have the time. But I'm going to take you through some recordings of some of Feldman's major works so that you can get a sense of what they are and, how to listen to them, and then turn you loose to go and experiment on your own. The first piece I would mention is Rothko Chapel, which has actually been recorded 3 or 4 times. It's unbelievable, but it's not that long. It's only 23 minutes long. Here's a recording on, this one is on Hensler. It's an SWR recording. It probably is still available with the SWR Vocal Ensemble of Stuttgart. Rothko Chapel is a setting of it's sort of hard to describe. It was written for the Rothko Chapel in Houston, Texas. It's a meditation space, and the work was composed for that setting. I mean, that's what it is. It is an evocation of that actual space. It's composed for celesta, percussion, soprano and alto soloist, and chorus. And the interesting thing about it is, as I said, these forces are used to simply to create that feeling of being in that space. There's nothing really else happening in it. And the most wonderful thing about it is that there's a solo viola also in there. At the end, it plays an actual tune that Feldman wrote when he was 15 years old. And the tune is striking because he doesn't usually write tunes, and this is a lovely tonal little melody. And the point of the melody is that in this context, it itself becomes an object, separated almost from its normal context. You don't think of the music as being melodic or expressive in that way. It's just another thing that you encounter on your way through the music while you sit in Rothko's chapel. It's a wonderful work, very, very beautiful, very mysterious, deeply meditative, and it's a great way to get into his sound world. Another easy way to sort of get into Feldman is to listen to his piano pieces. I have two of them here, two of the major ones. One is for Bonita Marcus, who was his assistant and who worked with him, and the other is Triadic Memories. Now, Triadic Memories is about 2 hours long, and for Bonita Marcus is actually, let's see here, that lasts about an hour and a half in this performance. There is actually a wide range of fluctuation in how long these pieces take because it's all about tempo, obviously, and pacing. And the key is to find a tempo that allows listeners to hear the patterns and to hear the patterns gradually evolve over time. I think some artists take them too slowly, but it all depends on your own ability to concentrate and pay attention to the extent that you want to pay attention. But these piano works have been fairly well known and have been performed multiple times. Triadic Memories has several recordings. For Bonita Marcus, maybe his most popular, such as it is, piano piece. Marc-Andre Hamelin recorded it for Hyperion quite well, I might add. These performances are on the Oehms label, which also means that they shouldn't be too hard to find. The pianist is Sabina Leibner, who is a superb exponent of the music. And if you're interested in interesting piano music, then Triadic Memories and For Bonita Marcus are the two Feldman works that you should probably get to know. You may think they sound kind of similar, and they do. But remember, the music is always very, very quiet. And, the whole concept is simply to watch the shape, evolve and slowly move. And if you fall asleep, that's fine. If you need to get up and go to the bathroom, that's okay too, because you are within the music, you're within the space. And even though it's very soft, you don't want to make a lot of noise, whatever else you may be doing, you can dip into it or not at will. I actually find it to be ideal for insomnia. There is nothing better to fall asleep to than Morton Feldman. And I don't mean that humorously or sarcastically. It's true. You put it on, it captivates you. You try and focus on it and just drift off. And frankly, I think that is a noble thing for music to do to us. Because, when you fall asleep to like Beethoven or Mozart or, something like that, you feel guilty. Fall asleep to Mahler, you really feel guilty because there's so much happening and it's exciting and it's noisy and you just like this. You don't feel guilty falling asleep to Morton Feldman. It's actually just perfect to help send you off to slumberland. Another work that I recommend very, very strongly as an introduction to his work, which I think is absolutely fabulous and gorgeous, is Three Voices. This was written in the 80s. I think, what was the year here? 82, for avant-garde specialist singer Joan LaBarbera. And it is an amazing piece in which the soloist is actually singing with herself. In other words, the live performance is accompanied by two taped performances, which are all take place simultaneously and all involve, again, triple piano, these minute melodic and rhythmic fragments that interlock. But at the center of the work, it is actually a setting of a poetic text by Frank O'Hara, and it's less than an hour, which is wonderful, and it's really an amazing piece. It's astonishingly expressive in its way, when it gets to the actual words, if you can hear them and make sense of them. And it's one of the masterpieces, true masterpieces of alternate music, if you want to call it 20th century serious musical composition. It's a fabulously realized piece. It's also been recorded a couple of times, but not too frequently. As you can imagine, it is extremely difficult to do. I mean, one singer, she has to make the two tapes, and then she has to sing with herself when performing it live. It's a virtuoso tour de force, but it all takes place at this completely subdued dynamic level, and the rhythms are mechanically precise all the way through it. So it's an astonishing experience. But I think having the whole performance done by one vocalist tends to really sort of highlight this tension between the natural expressivity of the human voice and the total objectified inexpressivity of the music itself. You have to experience it to know what I'm talking about, but it's a remarkable thing. But now I'm going to talk to you about three works for ensemble, chamber ensemble. And there is also a whole suite of orchestral music, which I'm not going to discuss right now, which is a whole nother world. But and equally fascinating in its way. But those tend to be shorter, obviously, because they're orchestral works, and no one's going to sit there for 25 hours, and But these are chamber works, and they are extraordinary. One of the most well-known, such as they are, is Crippled Symmetry. Here it is on bridge with the California Ear Unit. Now, Bridge has done yeoman work for Morton Feldman's music, so has Mode Records. There are a couple labels. There was a label called Hat Art out of Switzerland, which recorded a lot of this music, but those discs are virtually impossible to obtain nowadays. They had financial issues and the label disappeared, then it came back, and whether it's still around, I'm not 100% sure. But Three Voices is on New Albion, and as I mentioned, the others were on Ohms. But this is an extraordinary recording by the California Ear Unit of a piece called Crippled Symmetry, which is based on the rugs. And if you look at the picture here, you sort of get an idea, I think, of the patterns that inspired Feldman and the kind of things that his music seeks to exemplify. That is, to create this kind of rug pattern in music. And that pattern, that rug, is a thing. It's not intended to express anything other than itself. It's an object. It's completely objectified. Crippled Symmetry is lovely because it's only about 90 minutes long, and at least in this performance it's 87 minutes, and so you can hear it in a reasonable period of time. And the title says it all, Crippled Symmetry. It's about symmetrical patterns that aren't quite, and you can hear that, and it's a joyous experience to hear these slowly moving shapes. And the other two pieces here are For Christian Wolf, which is a modest 3 hours and a bit. This is also the California Ear Unit on Bridge Records. It's scored for flute, piano, and celesta. Crippled Symmetry is for flute, various percussions, and usually a glockenspiel, and maybe vibraphone, and piano and celesta. And then there is sort of the biggie that I really love, for Philip Guston, over 4 hours long, for various kinds of flutes, piano, celesta, and again the percussion, glockenspiel, vibraphone. I mean, these are for Philip Guston for Philip Guston, a major experience, a real long haul. But again, you can dip into it anywhere you want. You can put in one part, disc 3, start at disc 1. Doesn't make any difference if you start at the beginning. You can play it backwards. You can do it because it's a mobile. It's an object. You can look at it from any angle. There's nothing like this music. Nothing like it. And the fact that it's all happening at such a low dynamic level, most of the time, every so often, there's like an eruptive screech just to wake you up. But, most of it happens at such a soft dynamic level. It falls so easily on the ear, even though these patterns are completely atonal. But there's a reason. There's a reason for Feldman's, general avoidance of melody and tonality. I mean, the reason, quite simply, is so that you can focus on the musical shapes, so that you're not distracted by wanting to hum something and then disappointed when that thing turns into something else. It's all about the shape and all about the recurring pattern and the rhythm, as it proceeds through time. There is nothing else like this music in the modern repertoire. And you don't have to get into it as much as I have. I find it fascinating, and I've collected Feldman for many years now. But it's definitely worth hearing for a totally original and, I think, fully realized, seriously fully realized alternate view of music's potential and possibilities. And for that reason, I urge you to listen to some Morton Feldman. Get one of these performances on bridge. If you don't want to go for 4 CDs, go for the 2 of Crippled Symmetry. Maybe try the piano music. Definitely listen to 3 Voices and also Rothko Chapel. And see what you think. See how it strikes you. And tell me, let me know, if you know this music, how it strikes you, what you think about it, what it is, what it does. It's a whole new way of thinking about music, in my view. So do please keep on listening to Morton Feldman and some of these other guys we're going to be talking about. And take care. Thank you.